So now let's take a look at how I set up my editing room. In Hollywood, sometimes we call the editing room the cutting room. In the Hollywood studio days, the editing was done with film and done with glue and done with scissors, and so that's where the name came from, and I think that kind of stuck. So I always, and my assistants, my crew, we always refer to it as the cutting room. As an editor, I think it's very important to have your own, if you can afford it, if your movie can afford it, I think it's very important to have your own private editing room, a place where you can not be disturbed, and it's a place where you can work privately. And later on, when you start working with the director, it's a place that the two of you can work without interruption. So I think it's important that you have a room with a door. Some editors insist on a room with windows so you can see outside. Sometimes I like that, sometimes I don't. Again, it's very subjective. Some editors like to have windows because they like to remind the filmmakers and the producers when it becomes nighttime and when it's time to stop working. I sometimes prefer to have a room with the option of becoming more dark. So a window is nice to be able to see outside, but for me, and working by myself and working with a director, it's very important to have a room that can get dark. Dark enough, not completely black necessarily, but dark enough that I can look at the monitor, or my director can look at the monitor, and not have reflections and distractions. I like to arrange my Avid on one side of the room, on the back, and in front of it, I have a couch. And the couch is where the director sits, where the producers sit, anyone I want to work with, or anyone who will be looking at the cuts. We're going to sit in front. I have a coffee table. I put a little water. I always try to make the room as comfortable as possible for the director. When directors finish shooting, when they come from the set, they're exhausted, they're broken, they need a vacation, but often they don't have the luxury of taking a vacation. And so my editing room is meant to be a safe haven. It's meant to be a place that's welcoming and warm. It's a place where they can come out of the battlefield of shooting and be in a safe place. When they're looking at the monitor, that's all they see. And I don't know if you can tell, but I always have my assistants, my assistant editors, my crew, they hang black material behind this big monitor. This big monitor is what the director will look at. I used to have a setup where I would sit with my monitors in front and the director would be behind me. And that's okay, and some editors prefer that. I changed it because when I run my cut for a director or producer, whoever I'm running it for, I don't need them to look at what I'm doing or to look at all my other monitors, because you can see when you're working with Avid or even other editing systems, Final Cut, Premiere, you have a lot of different monitors. And I find it distracting. My goal is to give them one image to look at as cleanly as possible, have everything else disappear, and just have it be about the image you see, the picture. So that's why I try to have nothing in front of the director, so they have the best possible view, the best seat in the house. It's hard to see in this picture, but I have several standing lamps, and my lamps usually have about 3 of them. My lamps are on a light dimmer. So, and it's very simple, it's nothing very fancy, it's something that my assistant always can buy. It's cheap. Just at any store that sells lamps, and it's no special equipment, it's very standard, and there's a dimmer, and all the lamps are plugged into the dimmer, and it's very simple, but people, whenever I dim the lights, they're always very impressed. And then it's just about the picture on the screen, it's just about what the director's seeing in front. I have 3 speakers. It's a setup that is more common with Hollywood movies. It's not very common in Hollywood for television. Maybe someday it will be. But these days, it's very normal and very standard for Hollywood movies, especially movies for the big screen, big action movies. The reason you want this is that you have your dialogue coming out of the center speaker, and then you have your left and right stereo, which is good for your music and good for stereo sound effects. But the dialogue always comes out of the center. And this emulates the standard sound format in movie theaters. It doesn't go as far as Dolby 5.1 or Dolby Atmos or anything elaborate like that. For me, it's very important that the sound polished and be as much of a template for my other departments to follow. So my sound team and my music team, I want to give them a template that they can then take as a starting point and improve. So in my experience, 3-track stereo is a close enough emulation of what you have in a movie theater. There was a question, do we edit with 5.1 sound with the surrounds? Technically, it was possible and we could do it. But each editor has to judge who you're working with and is it right for this project. My feeling was there was going to be enough complications with just getting the story right, with just getting the picture right. And I didn't want to get bogged down while I was editing the story with worrying about the surrounds and the bass and all this stuff. I wanted to have that detailed work done later. So, and I knew that Damien Chazelle, as I've described to you many times, is such a perfectionist that I knew that when we'd be working, if we had the surrounds and you heard something in the surround, he'd probably say, well, you know what, I have another note in addition to the picture notes. It's the surround. We need to change that. We need to fix that right now. I also have a little bit of black draped around my Avid table, just to hide all the wires, just to make it a little more cleaner. That's just my own compulsive nature, wanting to have things be a little clean. But the thing you're not seeing is this desk I always use is an electric desk. So this right now is in a position where I sit. But a lot of times I will electrically raise this desk up so I can stand. I spend a lot of time standing at my Avid working. And that's something that editors have started thinking about a lot in Hollywood, their health. They've started thinking about how can I work the hours that we work. There's so many hours. It's very normal for editors to work 12 hours a day, 13, 14 hours a day. On First Man, we worked 6-day weeks, sometimes 7-day weeks, anywhere from 12 to 20 hours a day, because we had this very ambitious schedule that we had to meet. And that's very hard. And so as an editor, as a human being, you want to protect yourself. You want to protect your health. And so it is important to think about how things are set up. Is this going to be hard on your back? And so I try to switch it up. So a lot of times I sit, and every once in a while, when I feel like it, I'll change it. I'll raise up the desk so then I'm standing and I can edit while I'm standing. I like to have a calendar in my room. In editing, as well as other aspects of film, the schedule is very important. And I like to put the key dates on that schedule. When do I have to have a first cut to show the director? When's the director coming in? When's that person expecting to see something? When do the producers want to see something? When does the studio, if you're working on a bigger movie with a movie studio, when do they want to see the movie? These are dates that you should know. These are dates that are very important because in your schedule you want to back in your work into those dates. When are we supposed to deliver the movie, the final movie? When, if you're trying to make a film festival, when is the Sundance Film Festival? When is the Beijing Film Festival, the Venice Film Festival? These are things that you need to know and that you want to plan for. So I always have a calendar somewhere in my room, usually near me where I'm working in the back. I also have, and this is hard to see, but on the left side, I have a list of all the scenes of the film based on the script, all the scenes, and I have a little check mark of when it was shot and when I've looked at the footage for that scene, when I've cut the scene, so I can start to keep track of what scenes are still needing to be shot and what scenes still need to be cut. And I mention that because usually on a Hollywood movie, it's very standard and has been this way since the 1930s. It's been very standard to have an editor on while they're shooting. And the reason they do that, as opposed to waiting until you're done, the reason you do that is because you want the editor to alert you if there are any problems, if there are other things that you need. We need a close-up of this actor. We need an insert shot of this. Or something just doesn't make sense on a story level. You want to protect the movie, and you want to do it while you're shooting, while you still have the actors, while you still have the sets. Shooting a movie is such a whirlwind, a hurricane, a tornado of a process, a storm. The production is constantly finishing with actors and sending them away, sending them off on their way. They're constantly breaking sets or wanting to break down sets when they're done. They want to wrap. They want to try to finish things. If you need something later and the sets are already broken down and wrapped and don't exist, it's going to cost that much more money to build them again. You may not even have the luxury of building them again. You may not have the luxury of getting the actor again because the actor's gone on to another project. So that's a big part of editing while you're shooting. The overall goal is, and this has been standard for many, many years in Hollywood, the overall goal is to have, for the editor to have a first cut 1 week after shooting wraps. The director has a centered, very clear view of the monitor of the movie, and so do I. I sit behind that person. But the idea is to make yourself centered. So you're centered with the picture and you're centered with the speakers, which is something that was important to me. So I can hear what it sounds like. If I'm having a setup and and I'm sitting over here, or I'm screening for someone important and the room is crowded and everyone has to sit in weird places, I always think about who's the most important person to watch this movie. Is it the head of the studio? Okay, put them here in the sweet spot. Don't put them over here where they won't be able to hear the dialogue. Because when they don't hear the dialogue, they may have some notes about the movie not working for whatever reason. You really want to put your best foot forward, and that's what you try to do with a setup like this. So I always have one wall where I put wall cards. I have my assistants take the script and take what's called a continuity, which is a list of every scene in the script. It's a description of the location, interior, house, day, and then it describes what happens inside the house. Every single scene has an index card, and at the start of every project, I have my crew create a card with just the words, and so they put it up on my wall. So I have a card with every single scene on the wall. Because I like to have a wall where I can basically step back and I can look at all the scenes that make up the movie. I can get a fuller view of what the challenge is going to be. We start with this wall with these index cards, and as the movie is shot, the footage is one way or another, depending on how it's shot, film, digital, it gets sent to my crew, my assistants. My assistants organize the footage. They organize it the way I like it organized, and I'll touch on that momentarily. But they always then take a representative frame, a still, from the scene, and then they put it they put that on a card. So As the scenes are shot, these cards on my wall that just had words get replaced with pictures. They get replaced with picture wall cards. So I can look at my wall every day and I can start seeing the scenes that have been shot as these cards start appearing on my wall. And I can start to see what still needs to be done, what still needs to be shot, and what I still need to edit, what I still need to cut. So it's important to me that at least one wall in my editing room is clean and is not filled with too many switches or windows. It has to be able to accommodate all the cards for the whole movie. And I like it to be on one wall. This is just my personal feeling. I like it to be on one wall so that I can step back and I can say, this is the movie. And then I can be either excited or I can cry, whatever, but this is it. This is the task we have at hand. And this is something we always consider when I come to look at potential office space with my assistants. I say, where are we going to put the wall cards? Great. This wall is where we're going to put it. Perfect. I have tiny little lamps. It doesn't really matter what kind, but I do have little lamps that have little dimmers so that when I do dim the lights and all the lights go off in my room, I still can see the keyboard. I still have some little lights so I can write notes and stuff like that. These are little things that are little details, but they make my job easier, and they're things that I have bits of little knowledge and tips that I've just acquired from all the many years of doing this. I like to have a clock. I like to have a wall clock in my room. I mean, I have a wristwatch, I have a phone. I still like to have a clock. I like it to be there for myself. I also like it to be there for anyone else that comes in the room, the director, producer, anyone. I just like it to be there. I'm not sure I have a good explanation for it, except for I think about time a lot. This is something that's outside of my room, and this is a red light bulb that I have outside of my room. And I can control this light from a switch on my console right next to my dimmer to dim the lights. I have a red light so that when I don't want to be disturbed, I can turn it on. And then when the light bulb is red, people know to not come in, they know to not knock. And it's very helpful for me for screenings. Not too many people do this, not too many editors do it. I heard that, I think I got the idea because I thought I heard that Thelma Schoonmaker, who edits Martin Scorsese's movie, I heard that she has that. And now a lot of my colleagues make fun of me for having this light on because I'm so important and I need to have this light on. But I find it very useful, and I have to say the directors I work with now love it. Damien can't work without it, you know. And the reason it's important is that the way normally, when you don't have a red light and you're about to screen something, you're about to run a rough cut, you don't want someone opening the door or knocking on the door while you're looking at something, especially with your director. You don't want to be disturbed. Normally what you do is you have a little piece of paper, a sign that says screening in progress, do not knock, and you tape it on your door. That's great if you're running something of a certain length, but sometimes when I'm working with a director, I'm running something that's 30 seconds long or 2 minutes long. Do I want to have to get up and put a sign on my door every single time I start and stop? So this way I can be at my desk and I can just hit a switch and say, you know what, I can say to Damien, look, I just did some changes. Let's take a look. And we can run something that's a minute long, and I can put the switch on, and then people know not to knock, not to disturb us. And then as soon as it's done, it's important, I have to turn it off. It's important to turn it off because when you work on a big movie with a lot of moving parts, other departments, music, visual effects, they need me, they need Damien, they need to show us things, they need to ask us questions. So it isn't always as simple as that Damien and I go into the room and we lock the door. When we want it to be locked, we do, but the reality is we have to juggle with a big movie. We have to juggle a lot of different elements. And you try to control it as best you can, but you always do. So just as it's important to turn on that red light to tell people to stay away, it's important to turn it off.